The 6 habits no one tells you about after 75. There is a secret sitting inside the bodies of a small percentage of people over 75. Not a pill, not a procedure, not anything your doctor has 15 minutes to explain to you at your last checkup. It's a pattern, a quiet, almost invisible pattern of behavior that separates the people who are still gardening, still driving themselves to appointments, still beating their grandkids at cards at 83 years old, from the people who, at the exact same age, have already surrendered their independence to a walker, a caregiver, or a waiting list for assisted living. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Most people never find out which group they belong to until it's too late to switch. I'm Dr. Alexander for more than 20 years. I've sat across the exam table from patients in their mid-70s, 80s, and beyond. And in that time, I've noticed something that the research community is only now catching up to. The people who age remarkably well are not doing anything exotic. They're doing 6 specific things, consistently, quietly. Almost none of them talk about it, because they don't realize how rare it's become. Longevity researchers who've tracked older adults for over a decade have found something striking. People who kept up just 4 or more of these 6 habits were dramatically less likely to experience what's called accelerated functional decline, the sudden, steep loss of independence that lands so many people in assisted living years earlier than it needed to happen. Now here's where I need you to trust me for the next 20 minutes, because I'm going to save the most important one for last. It's not diet. It's not exercise. Most cardiologists never even mention it in a checkup. But some of the researchers looking hardest at cognitive and physical independence after 75 believe it may be the single strongest predictor of who keeps their independence and who doesn't. Before we get there, tell me something. Drop your age in the comments right now. 68, 74, 81, wherever you are, and tell me honestly which of these 6 habits you think you already have. I read every comment. Everyone. This channel only works because of the people in it. So let's have a real conversation. Let's start at number 6 and count down to the one thing almost nobody is doing. Number 6. Drink like your life depends on IT, because it does. Here's what almost everyone gets wrong about hydration past 75. They assume their body handles water the same way it did at 45. It doesn't, and the difference is bigger than most people realize. Past age 70, kidney filtering efficiency drops noticeably. Worse, your thirst signal, the internal alarm that used to tell you when you needed water, becomes blunted. You could be seriously dehydrated and simply not feel it. Meanwhile, your blood's ability to carry oxygen and nutrients to your brain and muscles falls with every percentage point of fluid you lose. Picture your bloodstream as a delivery network. When the river running through that network gets shallow, the trucks slow down, packages get lost, and the whole system starts to sputter. That's what quiet, chronic mild dehydration does to an aging body. Never dramatic enough to send you to the ER, but persistent enough to steal your sharpness one afternoon at a time. Researchers studying adults over 70 have linked consistent daily hydration with meaningfully fewer urinary tract infections, fewer falls, dehydration wrecks balance and reaction time, and better short-term memory performance. Remember, your brain is roughly 3/4 water. Even a small drop in hydration causes measurable mental fog at any age, but after 75, your brain's built-in compensating mechanisms are already working overtime just to keep the lights on. Here's what the people who age exceptionally well actually do differently. They don't wait to feel thirsty. They drink a glass of water first thing in the morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before anything, because the body loses fluid all night through breathing, and that overnight deficit is larger after 75 than it was in midlife. Then a small glass with every meal. One more mid-afternoon. One extra trick worth knowing. Pair your morning water with a small pinch of good sea salt or an electrolyte tablet. After 75, kidneys hold on to sodium less efficiently, and without it, plain water can pass through the body without ever being fully absorbed where it's needed. I once treated a woman in her early 80s who came in describing afternoon brain fog, dizziness on standing, and a sense that her thinking was wrapped in cotton. She wasn't dramatically dehydrated. She was quietly, chronically underhydrated. We adjusted her timing and added a small electrolyte habit each morning. Within 6 weeks, she said it felt like someone had cleaned the windows of her mind. Number 5, move against resistance. Twice a week is enough. I want to clear up a misunderstanding right away. When I say resistance training, I don't mean a gym membership and a barbell. I mean any movement that makes your muscles push or pull against a force, a resistance band, a light dumbbell, a wall push-up, even carrying your own groceries with intention. Here's why this matters so much more after 75. Aging muscle develops something researchers call anabolic resistance. Your muscle cells become less responsive to the normal signals, protein movement, that tell them to grow and repair. In plain terms, your body now needs a stronger, more deliberate signal to hold on to the same muscle a 50-year-old keeps almost by accident. Your muscles aren't lazy. They're just harder to reach. Ignore that signal long enough, and you slide into sarcopenia, progressive muscle loss that's been tied to a sharply increased risk of falls, a much higher chance of losing the ability to manage basic daily tasks within a few years, and a shortened lifespan overall. But here's the encouraging part. Adults in their late 70s and 80s who start twice-weekly resistance work show real, measurable gains within about 10 weeks, meaningfully stronger legs, better balance, and this always surprises people, better insulin sensitivity, which affects energy, inflammation, and even mental clarity. The mitochondria inside your muscle cells, essentially your body's power plants, regenerate more efficiently when resistance training is part of your week. You're not just building muscle. You're rebuilding your energy infrastructure. The prescription is simple. 2 to 3 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes each. Focus on the big muscle groups, legs, hips, back. Resistance bands are ideal because they build strength without hammering the joints. One more detail that matters. Try to eat a solid dose of protein within about 30 minutes of your session. After 75, the window during which your muscles can efficiently use that protein for repair is shorter and less forgiving than it was in your 40s. Timing isn't a nice to have here. It's the difference between a session that counts and one that doesn't. Number 4, protect your sleep like it's medicine, because it is. Quick favor before we continue. If this is giving you something useful, tap subscribe. And if someone in your life is between 70 and 90, send them this video today. This channel exists so people get the information their 15-minute appointments never have time for. Now, sleep. And this is far more complicated than simply going to bed early. After 75, your circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock, starts to weaken. Melatonin production drops substantially compared to your 30s. Slow wave sleep, the deepest, most physically restorative stage, shrinks dramatically. That stage is when growth hormone gets released, the hormone responsible for cellular repair, immune strength, and muscle maintenance. Here's what most people don't realize. Poor sleep after 75 isn't just about feeling tired the next day. Researchers studying older adults have connected disrupted sleep with a meaningfully higher buildup of amyloid plaques in the brain, the same plaques linked to Alzheimer's. The people who handle this, well, don't just sleep more hours. They sleep on a schedule, bed within the same 30-minute window every night, awake at the same time every morning, weekends included, bedroom kept cool, somewhere in the mid-60s Fahrenheit, because temperature regulation during sleep becomes less efficient with age, and a cooler room supports the deep sleep your brain badly needs. And they put screens away a full hour before bed, not just because of blue light, but because mental stimulation keeps the thinking part of your brain switched on, measurably delaying how fast you actually fall asleep. One more tool. 10 minutes of slow, deliberate breathing before bed activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and repair mode, and can meaningfully lower nighttime stress hormones, making deep sleep easier to reach and easier to stay in. Number 3, eat protein like you mean it. Here's a piece of folklore I need to correct because I think it's genuinely dangerous. The idea that you need less protein as you age. The truth is the opposite. Because of that same anabolic resistance I mentioned earlier, your body actually needs meaningfully more protein per pound of body weight after 75 to hold onto the same muscle a healthy 30-year-old maintains with less effort. And yet most seniors I see are eating far less protein than they need, often because appetite naturally fades and easy carbohydrate-heavy foods feel simpler to prepare. Research following older adults who consistently hit a solid daily protein target, spread across 3 or more meals, found meaningfully more preserved muscle mass, notably fewer fall-related hospitalizations, and better immune response to common illnesses like the flu and pneumonia. Think of protein as the building material your body uses to repair itself overnight. Every night, while you sleep, old tissue is broken down and rebuilt. Without enough material, that reconstruction stays incomplete. And over months and years, the shortfall compounds into something serious. Practically, aim for a solid serving of protein, roughly the size of your palm, maybe a bit more at each of your 3 main meals: chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, legumes. Spreading out matters because aging muscles can only use so much protein in one sitting for actual repair. The rest just gets burned for energy instead. Distribution is what makes every gram count. I once worked with a man in his late 70s whose daughter had noticed he'd lost close to 20 pounds, which his previous doctor had dismissed as normal for his age. It wasn't normal. He was losing muscle, not fat, and his grip strength, a strong predictor of longevity in older adults, had fallen into the bottom range for his age group. We restructured his meals around deliberate protein timing. 3 months later, he'd regained most of that lean mass. His grip strength had climbed back toward the middle of the pack, and he told me, with real pride, that he carried his own groceries in from the car for the first time in 2 years. One pairing tip: eat a little vitamin C alongside your protein. An orange, some bell pepper, a splash of lemon, because vitamin C supports collagen production, which works alongside protein to maintain not just muscle, but joint cartilage and skin integrity too. Number 2, treat connection like prescription. I told you one of the top 2 habits would surprise you. This is the one people dismiss as too soft to be medical advice. I want to be very clear. The research on social connection and longevity after 75 is some of the most consistently replicated science in the entire field of aging. Large-scale research tracking hundreds of thousands of adults has found that chronic social isolation carries a mortality risk comparable to smoking roughly 15 cigarettes a day. Read that again. Isolation can be that dangerous. For adults over 75 specifically, loneliness has been linked to meaningfully faster cognitive decline, a sharply elevated risk of dementia, and higher levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, markers that damage the heart, the immune system, and the brain's wiring over time. Here's the biology behind it. Genuine social interaction, real conversation, shared laughter, a bit of friendly disagreement triggers oxytocin release, which lowers stress hormones, calms inflammation, and keeps the thinking part of your brain active. Think of your social brain like a muscle. The same neurons that fire during a real conversation are the ones responsible for memory, decision-making, and your sense of self. Go quiet for weeks, and those pathways start to fade. And after 75, your brain's ability to rebuild lost pathways is already reduced, which makes neglected connections much harder to restore later. The prescription is simple but has to be intentional. At least one meaningful, engaged interaction every single day. A phone call counts if you're genuinely present in it. A book club, a faith group, a regular walk with a neighbor, a standing lunch date. What doesn't count is passive presence, sitting in the same room as someone with the TV on. The brain needs you actively responding, laughing, disagreeing, sharing. I once worked with a woman in her early 80s who lost her husband after more than 5 decades of marriage and withdrew almost entirely from social life. Within 8 months, her cognitive scores had noticeably slipped. We didn't touch her medication. We built her a social calendar instead, a weekly book club, a daily rotating phone call with friends and family, a twice-weekly volunteer shift at the library. 8 months later, her scores had returned close to baseline, and her daughter told me she finally seemed like herself again. One bonus tip: combine connection with movement whenever you can. A walk with a friend, a group exercise class, gardening with a neighbor. The two together appear to have a bigger effect on brain health than either alone. And now, number 1. This is a habit fewer than 1 in 10 adults over 75 maintain consistently, and some researchers studying healthy aging have called it the single most underused prescription-free longevity tool available. Number 1, daily, deliberate cognitive challenge. Not crossword puzzles, not passive reading, though both have value. I'm talking about something harder and more transformative. Genuinely learning something new, a language, an instrument, a new creative skill, something that puts your brain into a state of productive discomfort. Here's why this earns the top spot. After 75, the brain naturally starts favoring familiar, well-worn neural pathways. It becomes extremely efficient at doing what it already knows and reluctant to build anything new. That's not a flaw. It's your brain conserving energy. But that same efficiency is exactly what drains something researchers call cognitive reserve, your brain's resilience buffer, its ability to absorb age-related change and keep functioning at a high level. Think of it like the memory in a computer. The more reserve you have, the more your brain can withstand before symptoms of decline show up at all. Long-running studies following adults from their 70s into their late 80s have found that those who engage in genuinely novel, challenging mental activity for at least half an hour a day showed a meaningfully slower rate of brain shrinkage on imaging, better processing speed and memory, and a notably lower likelihood of a dementia diagnosis over the following decade. Other research on aging populations has found that people who describe their daily lives as intellectually engaging perform on cognitive tests roughly like people a decade younger. The mechanism is neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize and form new connections. It slows with age, but it never fully disappears. It just needs a strong enough reason to activate. Novel learning is that reason. Learning a new language, for instance, lights up several brain regions simultaneously and has been associated in some studies with meaningfully delaying dementia onset. Learning an instrument engages fine motor control, hearing, memory, and emotion all at once, something almost no other activity does. Even learning to cook an unfamiliar cuisine counts because it demands reading, sequencing, sensory attention, and coordination. The practical version: pick one genuinely new skill every few months and spend 20 to 30 minutes a day actively working on it. Actively is the key word. Watching someone else play guitar isn't learning guitar. Sitting with the instrument, fumbling through a chord, getting it wrong. That struggle is where the benefit actually lives. It's the mental version of resistance training. The discomfort is the point. I once worked with a retired engineer in his late 70s who spent his first few years of retirement doing very little that challenged him mentally. He started noticing trouble recalling names and following complex conversation. His scans looked age-appropriate, but his cognitive reserve wasn't where I wanted it. I gave him one instruction: pick something you've always wanted to try and do it every day. He chose oil painting, something he'd never touched in his life. He was terrible at first, by his own admission. A year and a half later, he completed over 20 paintings, joined a local art group, quietly checking off habit number 2 at the same time, and his follow-up assessments showed genuine improvement, not just maintenance, across several measured areas. Improvement. At 79, one last pairing: omega-3s, specifically DHA, found in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, or in a quality fish oil supplement. DHA is a core structural fat in brain cell membranes, and some research suggests people with higher DHA levels get more benefit from cognitive training. Think of it as the fertilizer beneath the seed you're planting. I'd encourage you to look into the research behind each of these yourself and talk it through with your own doctor. What's right for you depends on your specific health picture, and nothing here replaces that conversation. Here's what I want to leave you with. I've sat across from enough patients in their 70s and 80s to know the stage of life gets treated far too often like a countdown, instead of what actually is a continuation. The body and mind at 75, at 80, at 85, hold on to a stubborn, remarkable capacity to adapt, not in spite of age. In conversation with these 6 habits: smart hydration, resistance movement, protected sleep, deliberate protein, daily connection, and real cognitive challenge, we're never about turning back the clock. They're about making the fullest possible use of the time the clock still has left. Carrying your own grocery, remembering your grandchild's name without writing it down, driving yourself to your own appointment, laughing until your eyes water at dinner with someone who matters. That's what independence looks like. And I've watched it happen with my own eyes in people who've been told there was nothing left to optimize. It is never too late to start. If you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. And before you go, tell me your age in the comments and tell me which of these 6 habits you already have a handle on and which one you're going to start building this week. I read every single one. Take care of yourself. You're worth the effort.